Back in 2019, a research paper landed, and it just completely changed the game for artificial intelligence. It was about a model that could do things it was never, ever taught to do. This is the story of GPT-2, and really, it all kicks off with one simple, mind-bending question.
And that right there was the big question, the mystery at the heart of all this. I mean, it sounds impossible, right? A bit like magic. How on earth could a machine learn a skill without a single lesson?
And yeah, we're not talking about simple party tricks here. The model showed it could actually handle really complex stuff. Understanding a piece of text, boiling it down to the main points, translating between languages, even answering questions about it. And it did all of this without any specific training. So the billion-dollar question is, how did it pull it off?
Okay, to really get why this was such a huge deal, you've got to understand what AI was like back then. Most models were what you'd call narrow experts. They could be absolutely world-class at one thing, but only that one thing.
The paper had this great word for them, brittle. So if you trained a model to find cats in photos, it would be amazing at it. But if you showed it a slightly different kind of photo or, asked it to find a dog instead, the whole thing would just fall apart. It didn't have any real flexible intelligence.
So this really gets to the core of the shift in thinking. The old way, what we call supervised learning, was a ton of work. You needed actual humans to create these huge, perfectly labeled data sets for every single task you wanted the AI to do. The new idea, unsupervised learning, was way different. The idea was to just let the AI loose on the messy, raw, unlabeled text of the internet and see what it could figure out. The goal was to go from a narrow expert to a competent generalist.
Which leads us to the wild idea at the center of this whole thing. What if? What if an AI was powerful enough that it could just learn how to do things like summarize or translate simply by seeing all the countless examples of humans already doing it, just hidden in plain sight in a giant pile of text? And the fancy term for this is unsupervised multitask learning. Basically, it's learning by osmosis. The theory went that if you just showed the model enough text from the internet, it would be forced to learn all these other skills just to get better at its one simple job, predicting what word comes next in a sentence.
And check this out, this is a perfect example from the data. Nobody told the model, hey, this is a translation example. Nope, the model just saw a phrase in French, followed by the words which translates as, and then the same phrase in English. If it sees that pattern enough times with enough different languages, eventually a light bulb goes off and it starts to figure out what translation is.
All right, so how did they actually build this thing? Well, it basically came down to this simple but super ambitious three-part recipe.
First up, they needed better data. Not just a random scrape of the web, but something with a bit of a quality filter. So they created web text. They took all the outbound links from Reddit that had at least 3 upvotes, which acted as a kind of human seal of approval. Second, they built a model that for the time was absolutely massive. And third, they gave it the simplest goal you can imagine. Just predict the next word. Over and over and over again, across 40 gigabytes of text.
And when I say massive, I mean massive. The biggest version of GPT-2 had over 1.5 billion parameters. You can think of parameters as all the little knobs and dials the model can tune as it learns. This incredible scale turned out to be the secret ingredient. It was the key to making the magic happen.
Okay, so we've got our recipe. A huge data set and a massive model with a simple goal. Let's go back to that original mystery, that magic trick. How does an AI do something it was never taught? Well, the answer lies in this breakthrough idea. So there's a scientific name for this magic trick, zero-shot task transfer. Zero shot literally means it gets 0 examples, 0 practice runs for the new task. You don't tweak it or give it any hints. You just give it a task, like summarize this, and bam, it can do it straight out of the box. And look, you don't have to take my word for it. This chart is straight from the paper, and it tells the whole story. What you're seeing here is performance on 4 totally different tasks. And notice that trend line? As the number of parameters, the size of the model, goes up along the bottom, the performance just keeps getting better and better. Bigger was, in fact, proving to be better.
I mean, the results were just mind-blowing. On several of these standard tests that academics use to measure performance, the biggest GPT-2 model set a new state-of-the-art, or SOTA. It actually beat models that were specifically and carefully trained for these jobs, and it did it without a single training example for that task. It's just incredible.
You can imagine the ripple effects from this were huge. It basically pointed to a whole new way of building more powerful and more general artificial intelligence.
So really, this paper wasn't just about showing off a cool new model. It was a massive proof of concept. It showed the world that if you just scale things up, the model, the data, you don't just get an AI that's better at its main job. You get one that develops completely new abilities, these emergent skills that nobody programmed into it. They just appeared.
And that, of course, left the entire AI world buzzing with one massive, tantalizing question. The researchers had proved that this recipe worked. So what happens if you just keep going? What happens if you push this idea to its absolute limit? What other crazy abilities might be hiding in there, just waiting to emerge, if we just keep scaling things up even further?